Welcome, everyone, to She Leads, a journey into feminine leadership. My name is Sarah Wu. I'm one of the founders of Anima Viva. And in this series, we're going to be talking to women in leadership. And that looks like a whole lot of different things. And today, we are really excited to welcome into the talk Cathy Coyle. And Cathy Coyle is a visionary guide and witch, and she's going to be sharing with us today about rewilding the soul and thinking about things like devotional living and nature being a teacher, as well as rites of passage. So I would love to welcome you, Cathy. Come on in and tell us a little bit about yourself. And how about you start with what does feminine leadership mean to you?
Thank you, Sarah, and everybody here. I'm excited to be part of the conversation on She Leads. And I actually just finished a 2-hour teaching for a group of women here on this very subject. So I'm alive with the leadership space and the energies of that. And I'm in Ireland. I think that's probably a good place to start to bring the land in a little bit. I'm living in Ireland with my husband. He's from South Africa, and we live a little bit of the year in South Africa as well, in Cape Town. So in between the hemispheres and experiencing the diversity of the bodies of the land in these two places. And I work with women all over the world. A lot of the women I work with are actually US based. A lot of them are US based, kind of feeling a desire to reclaim connection to their European lineages in a lot of the cases. And a big part of the work in, I suppose, the leadership space for me is around this kind of reclamation of the ancestral lineages that we're all carrying, and how can we give a little bit of voice for those lines and those lands and those places of our matriarchal lines in particular, but also our patriarchal lines to come into our work and kind of understand ourselves in this moment on this planet, in this time, moving into stewarding and supporting, I would say, a very lost society to find its way back to, yeah, to contact and reciprocity, all of these pieces. So it's a little bit about what it means to me.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's interesting because I grew up always being asked kind of like, who are you? Where do you come from? And it's interesting that a lot of your student base, you're following the people that you support are from the US because there's a lot of people lost there and not sure, who their home is and what their roots are. And, it's as we're making our way back to land and being people of mixed, ethnic heritage, I feel that actually the path of the witch is our way home, and for me, it was really, in coming into that identity was really, really supportive actually in my personal process in finding that like actually I identify with all land and I identify with the path of the people who speak, as a channel for the land, and I'm so curious, like when did you come out of the broom closet and what was it for you to find voice as witch?
Yeah, I love that. That's probably the best question I've ever been asked. um, yeah, it's interesting for me because I have identified as a witch since I can remember. I can remember being, maybe not using the word, but I remember making spell jars with roses when I was like 4. It's one of my earliest memories, making perfumes and oils and just being just encapsulated in the mythical and the mystical. And I think in part I give a lot of sort of thanks to my Irish heritage because of the richness of fairy lore in our cosmology as a land, as a people. And I was raised on these stories. I was raised on the stories of the banshee and the fae and the in between and the liminal spaces. It was a very natural part of, even though I was coming from a Catholic upbringing at that time, my great grandmother and my grandmothers, and being quite devout Catholics. But still, this piece of the mystery was so normal, and that
Mm.
influenced, I think, a lot of my path as I've emerged as a practitioner of the craft. So it was quite an organic piece for me. I always resonated with the archetype of the witch. I even before I was necessarily fully practicing, I was researching and reading, and my friends would have always known I was kind of embodying this archetype of the witch. But the real commitment to understanding this as a my understanding is that this is a shamanic pathway, and this deep desire, I was moving through what we might call like a shamanic calling. Like I was being called, I was moving through altered states, spontaneous states that nobody kind of had any reference point for me personally with what I was experiencing. And that was when I really started to understand, wait, this is the path of the witch. This is the only title I need. I don't need to worry about traveling to Peru or going here, or any of these things that a lot of people in my community who've gone down that path would have studied. For me, it was what's here, what's in the body of the land where I am. And I think it would have been 2018 was when I started what I call a patronage. So I patroned with the goddess Hecate.
Mm.
I very consciously came to that moment of dedicating myself to studying her particular mysteries, her particular lineage of traditional European witchcraft, and understanding it in a deeper way, understanding her as a mother of pharmacopoeia, a mother of poison plants. And I think in that moment was when the practitioner in me really became, oh, I'm a witch. This is what it is, whether it's psychology or whether it's working with plants or vision questing, the piece of me that I understand what I am is through this archetype, not even archetype of witch, through this truth of the witch, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I notice a lot of people are coming into the craft now, and I love it. I'm actually really happy that witch is becoming popular. Obviously, there was a lot of suffering that happened. And from my understanding of the witch craze, was that Ireland actually was one of the countries that kind of escaped a lot of the persecution. And I think that's probably why, it was able to stay in the heart and the soul of the people there,
Mm.
and I really feel quite blessed and happy. It's also part of my lineage. My grandmother's from County Armagh in the north. And so yeah, it's deep, to think about like where we came from and who we are now, and the reason for the reclaiming happening. And I feel as witches, one of our gifts is the sensitivity to the soul of the world, and feeling the world just suffering in so many ways, from industrial agriculture and industrial animal farming to humans that are suffering in all the ways. And so what do you feel as a devotee to the goddess, a devotee to the land, as a guide for other humankind right now? Like, what do you feel is your kind of your, if we could use another word like dharma, or your mission, or your star? Like, what guides you?
Yeah. Mm, mm, mm. I've been working a lot with this sensation of north and meditating with magnetic north, and this kind of contemplation of supporting the body to, yeah, to just attune to that innate knowing, like a bird knows its migratory routes, or a salmon knows, its birthing grounds. And it's so hard to encapsulate, but it's this piece of really wanting to support people to become fully human, like this absolute gift that it is to have this human body and to have this sensing creature that we are. And to be in reciprocity and in deep listening with nature. And I feel that that's a lot of my work. So there's two kind of streams. I personally, the biggest growth I've had has been through the practice of vigiling. So I do extended vigils with my teacher here in the west of Ireland, and that involves sitting out and dieting with a specific Irish tree. So, for example, I just finished in November, I did 10 days in the middle of winter in the heart of the coldest, snowiest -7 degrees Celsius in the west of Ireland with the yew tree and sitting with the yew medicine every day, fasting, drinking her, learning from her. And that's like, this is the soul of the work that I want to bring. I want to support people to understand how to re-enter into these rites of passage that we've lost, because in these places, I believe this is where we remember what it means like to just be in life, and the imprint that we make, the intentionality of how we live without these rites of passage. I think it was uh Bill Polkin in Soulcraft, he speaks about this piece of how we have these adolescent adults walking around the place who haven't been through these rites of passage, who haven't gone through this initiation into maturity. And this word maturation has been with me a lot the last couple of days. Actually, I'm like, actually, yes, I myself am stepping into a new level of maturation, and through learning through the body and learning through the wilderness. And somewhere there is where my work lies.
Wow, I got truth bumps all over, like thinking about you sitting with the yew trees. And for people who maybe are not familiar with these trees, who are watching and listening, they're some of the most ancient trees on planet Earth, and they're the trees of immortality, of life and death. And they, as they touch the ground and re-become themselves, and the old parts of them die, they're absolutely amazing. And they're also a tree that releases DMT. I remember learning about, you see them a lot in monasteries also, which is interesting, and how as we watch in more modern times, the monks like meditating with these trees also and going into states of ecstasy. And you just think about, from this release of the DMT, and you just like think about all the humans through time that have interacted with that branch, and the family of like the plant life, and how important it has been to our human evolution. And so it's really, it's so potent for you to be a modern human, like refinding all this. And it's interesting, like as a plant person, I'm an herbalist, and some of the big questions from skeptics are always like, well, how do you know? How do you know? And like when you say, well, the plants talk, it's one of these things that's like hard to describe, but I can imagine like being in a dieta with a yew tree like that in a harsh climate. Like you're really faced with the preciousness, like you said, of your human body, and also just the eternity of life right there. And I'd love if you could share just a little bit more about that experience, because it's really unique and really beautiful, and I'm sure it would probably be very inspirational, even though it might seem a little unreachable for some folks. And maybe within that, you could touch a little bit on the process of, dieting with a tree or dieting with the plants and being in the ecosystem like that, and how you came to that. It's a big question.
Yeah, so I think I'll work maybe a little bit backwards from the yew diet. This is something I've been, training is probably the word, training, preparing, visioning towards for a number of years. When I actually found my teacher to begin with, when I approached her many moons ago, I said, I want to sit with the yew tree. Like it was just this deep knowing that, and not that I had this big relationship with it, but there was just this, for me, she was speaking to me. And when I approached my teacher, and she said, yeah, but it's understood as the last tree. This is kind of the way that it's understood within the Celtic wheel of the trees, of sitting with the tree. It's at the center. It's understood as the last tree. And because it's that tree of death and resurrection, and you meet, she said to me before I came, you're going to meet your demons here. Like, this is, you have to be really ready for it. And so at that time, I remember her giving me we met online at the time, and she sent me an email, which was an exercise from her teacher, who's a woman called Carol Guyot. And it was a listening to plants, something, listening to plants, plant spirit communication. And I remember at the time buying a potted rose bush and putting it in my garden. And just the direction was, go and sit with the rose, like just sit with her, draw, listen, like feel what comes up in your body. And it was the simplest thing in the world. And from there, I eventually went to do my first full diet here, which was with the oak tree. And that was 5 days. And then I went to sit with the hazel tree and the holly tree and different trees over the last years. But a lot of the work that I do with women, even with the online work I do, is I tie in vigiling work into everything, because I think even for example, I had a women who are kind of cultivating their businesses, communications, strategy, this kind of thing. Even there, I will work with vigiling, because I understand that there's something in bringing your visions to the thresholds of sitting out. And sitting out for 3 hours for some women. It
Mm-hmm.
could, that might be going to the coast or going to the forest and just sitting for 3 hours. That might be all that they're ready for. For other women, I had a woman in Johannesburg a few years ago who couldn't go out to walk because it wasn't safe for her where she lived. And I had to consider, what would a of being able to go off into the wilderness and sit. And so I've really been mapping this for a number of years of how to support women to bring the vigil back into their lives. And that could be sitting by vigiling with candlelight for some hours, and sitting with a tea that you've prepared of roses or something like this. So bringing the plants in and bringing the elements into our world in the ways that are accessible and digestible for us, no matter where we're at. And there's so much can come from that space. Then we're learning how to listen again.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. I feel really, I'm like, I want to come. I want to come be with you. And I'm wondering, for maybe you can share a little bit for those listening, like how do they get involved with your work, and where can they find you? Just give yourself a good plug. And in our last 10 minutes here, we'll see if there's any questions or if anyone has any comments from folks watching. And if not, we'll just keep talking. But yeah,
Okay.
give yourself a plug of how people can be with you, learn with you, study with you, maybe even some resources that you feel particularly inspired by for people.
Thank you. So if you want to, you just engage with me a little bit, my website is my name. So it's www.cathycoyle.com. And I really recommend my newsletter, first kind of port of call, just to see what's happening, what I'm sharing, what's alive. I offer some beautiful retreats throughout the year. So we have a beautiful retreat in May in Ireland, and we'll be doing some work, me and my team, in Greece in September. And those are really nice spaces because I curate visioning within the retreats, and introducing women to sitting out in the wild and learning from plants and sitting with the plant in a new way. Um, yeah, I have a shamanic rose training starting in June. It's a 9-month program where I walk with women for 9 months to support them to really integrate the teachings of the rose in a way to facilitate rose immersions within their work. And that could look like within retreats or within one-to-one spaces, really just learning how to be with the spirit of this particular plant, which I kind of feel like the rose is my Venusian soul impulse. Like, she is my master teacher in this lifetime, and a lot of how I come to any of my work is through her, the lens of her teachings. So those are some little ways that you could potentially explore with me.
Let's see if we have anyone's watching. If you have any questions, you can feel free to drop them in the chat now. But until then, I would love to hear more about some of your insights and moments with the rose, because I know the rose is a very, very special plant to so many people, to so many cultures, associated with so many goddesses. It's really, I feel like almost like a plant of planet Earth, like when and if now the outer beings from space come down and, we could give them our pharmacopoeia. I feel like, Rose would be in the top 10, like how, share with us a little bit about deeper into the rose while we have a little bit more time here.
I came across some teachings a number of years ago about the rose, esoteric teachings that were speaking about how the rose is basically a Venusian plant, and this is kind of confirmed if we're going to observe the movement of nature and the movement of the cosmos. When Venus and the Earth are moving together across the 8-year cycle, she paints a perfect rose in the sky. So she's almost Venus is almost singing to us, this is her medicine. She's displaying to us in the sky. And the teaching that I received was around how Venus is the exalted twin sister of the planet Earth. So this is the belief. And she is kind of overseeing us through our epoch of evolution and this time of great change. And that the rose is this ecosystem of information and wisdom that's almost holding the body of the planet as she's moving through her exhalation or her exaltation, so to speak. And when you look at all of the traditions, like Sufism, in the Sufi tradition, they say that to meditate on the rose, just to contemplate her petals, her thorns, her stem, her root, that this is a pathway of contemplation for the soul to evolve. And even when we smell her, that we are coming into contact with the creator in its perfection, that it's this expression of the purity of the creator. So there's so many layers and levels to the mysteries. And I think the reason we're seeing this explosion of the rose mysteries, like so many people are speaking about it, so many women are working with it. And when you go into it, you start to see that this is a mystery tradition that has always been with us and exists in many, many cultures. So yeah, she's an invitation, I think, to a path of contemplation and a path of remembrance through contemplation of a flower.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because it's also a fairly accessible plant. I mean, of course, there's, like if you go and you buy a dozen roses, it can be perhaps a little costly, but there's so many wild species out there. And, even with its family members, for those of you maybe who are like, I don't know where a rose bush is, or there's no dog rose or any tea roses or anything wild around me, I think even looking to some of her cousins, like raspberry and strawberry and all of these, apples and cherries. It's like the almonds. It's like these are all cousins of this beautiful, beautiful flower. And they all live in that same plant family. And so I encourage folks, like if you can't find the exact plant that you're looking for, I think it's important to, like what Cathy says, like find what's around you, and we seek the holy, and we seek outer sources of it, or that we have to travel really far to the pyramids or to Machu Picchu or wherever it is. And it's the reminder that the holy is the ground beneath your feet where you're standing, and so look to who else may be there, to help you to learn and to help you connect. And if you are feeling the call to the path of the rose, like also find her cousins if you can't find her right there.
Yeah, I teach this with like for example, when I do retreats here, I had a practitioner, an Irish practitioner a few years ago who was bringing ecstatic dance to the space, and she wanted to bring cacao in, and it was the entire ethos of this entire retreat. We were working with dandelion root for cleansing. We were working with indigenous native Irish plants, and it was a really pivotal moment for me in saying, it was really funny because she was doing the dance in this field that was surrounded by hawthorn trees in bloom. And for me, hawthorn it's a part of the Rosacea family, and it is our indigenous cacao. It does the same thing. It's opening the heart. It's working in that same principle. And so it's these moments of actually, and the Rosacea family is the third biggest plant family in the world. So there's so much abundance in there. And yeah, you get to see the seasonality of the plant as well, working with it in different seasons, like plum and pear. And it's just an amazing family. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. We're coming to time, and I just want to thank you so much, Cathy. I feel really connected, and I'm happy that I got to be the person to interview you and to share with you. And I would love anytime you want to come visit us here in Costa Rica. I also take half the year in Italy. We can do some fun things together. I would also love, wow, for anyone who wants to make a pilgrimage to Ireland, especially if you have some of the Irish roots. Many of us coming from the US definitely have Irish roots. And it's a place to pilgrimage to. I had the great fortune to visit with my grandmother in the early 90s and haven't been back since, but maybe I'll come see you over there for a dance sometime. And I want to thank you so much for willing to talk to us today with Anima Viva and Soulful Living and through the She Leads program. Thank you so much, Cathy.
Thank you. And beautiful blessings to the program and everybody that's going to be with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you in following episodes. Have a great rest of your day, and may you be blessed in every step that you take here on planet Earth. Thank you.